Don't believe this. Did you know that white people created Pan-Africanism? And not only that, it was created to erase Black Americans' lineage, culture, and identity. I'm about to show you why Pan-Africanism is a scam and how the leaders who push it are inadvertently or advertently pushing white supremacy. But first, we got to start off with a quote from Malcolm X.
Only a fool will let his enemies teach his children.
Keep this quote in mind because that's the exact dilemma that we under. Now in school, there are objective things that are beneficial for us to learn, like math, and then there are subjective things like history, which can be weaponized, especially when you have to depend on your oppressor to teach you about your history. Because a major rule of colonization is to rewrite history to justify domination, use school, religion, and media to reshape the identity, and replace the native languages with colonizer languages. And also the goal of colonization is to control how people think about themselves and their past. See, they separate us from our parents at a very young age. We are sent to strangers, and these strangers have control over what goes inside of our minds. And we do this from the ages of 5 all the way to 18, and for a lot of people, all the way well into their 20s if they go to college. This is called indoctrination. Indoctrination is a process of teaching a person or a group to accept a set of beliefs, doctrines, and ideologies uncritically, often preventing them from questioning or considering alternative viewpoints. And indoctrination is also imposing specific ideologies in an educational setting, such as forcing one-sided views of history. This is why you'll see Pan-Africans and Afrocentric people try to attack people who have alternative views of history, because they are in place to ensure we never wake up to our true identity, and they pretend that they are fighting white supremacy when in reality they are actually upholding it and selling us out for profit. I call them sellouts and revolutionary clothing. These people are indoctrinated, and they want to make sure you stay indoctrinated as well, which is a form of brainwashing. And this was the same thing for our great scholars in history like W.E.B. Du Bois, and even current day people like Dr. Umar Johnson. W.E.B. Du Bois was a prominent pusher of Pan-Africanism. He was the first Black American to get a PhD in Harvard University. And guess what the subject was that he got his PhD in? You guessed it, history. Not only was he indoctrinated with one-sided narrative of history, he went to the highest level of indoctrination on that subject. See, Pan-Africanism was created by white people to take Black Americans off their homeland, which is America, and ship them to Africa. This is how the country of Liberia came about. And that's why the Liberian flag is similar to the American flag. And it was pushed by a racist group of people called the American Colonization Society. I'll go further in depth on them a little later. But the reason I mention them is because 2 white racists that was a part of that organization directly funded W.E.B. Du Bois. And because our leaders are indoctrinated by these racist whites, they are brainwashed into believing a narrative about history that keeps them from understanding that America is their homeland. So they use these puppets to brainwash us. So we might see a black face teaching us, but they are teaching a colonized narrative. So now that that's understood, let's talk about the white men who created Pan-Africanism. We will discuss them and the black faces who helped carry out their agenda. So to understand the origins of Pan-Africanism, we have to take it all the way back to the late 1700s. There was an indigenous man by the name of Paul Cuffey. And this one man debunks every lie and narrative you was ever taught about black history. Like, for example, Paul Cuffey was a full-blooded indigenous man, but because of his skin color, he will be considered a Black American today. And he was born in 1759 and passed away in 1817, which means he was alive during the time of slavery, yet he was born free and was actually a millionaire at the time. See, history likes to make it seem like all black people were slaves during this time and poor, but he was neither. Now, what does Paul Cuffey have to do with Pan-Africanism, you may ask? Everything. See, Paul Cuffey is one of the first victims of Pan-Africanism in history. He got his indigenous identity stripped from him, and over time, your favorite historians has been lying about his identity. Paul Cuffey was a Wampanoag Indian. And Wampanoag Indians was the Indians that the Pilgrims came across. You know, the Thanksgiving story. And here are historical depictions of how the Wampanoag Indians look. I mean, even one of the Indians who directly came across the Pilgrims was named the Black Sachem. And this is a picture of his granddaughter. And the reason it's so hard for you to believe is because of the massive propaganda and how they depict Indians in movies and media. Over time, we internalize these images. And also because they taught us that all dark-skinned people came from Africa, and they use the term African descent even when people do not descend from Africa. And for you people who want to say all people originated in Africa, I got a video coming out debunking that as well. See, this is all a part of the plan to make sure Black Americans never understand that they are the original people of this land. And through this video and future videos, I will be debunking the Outer Africa theory, and I will prove that all Black people with woolly hair do not come from one area of the planet, but that they are the aboriginals of every area of the planet. And this is why the white men created Pan-Africanism to hide this fact. Now let's get back to Paul Cuffey, the full-blooded American Indian, and why he's so major in the Pan-Africanism paradigm. See, because Paul Cuffey was indigenous to America, the white men of that time had a problem. You can't just kick a millionaire landlord off his soil if he knows he's a Wampanoag Indian with treaty rights. So they had to rebrand him. In 1811, Paul sailed to Liverpool. That's where he met a group of white men who was a part of something called the African Institution. These white philanthropists saw Paul Cuffey's ship and realized he was a perfect test pilot for the plan to get Black American Indians off their homeland and relocate them in Africa. So here's what they did. While Paul was busy trading, they was busy plotting. They was like the PR of that time. They published a book about him without his permission or his approval that minimized his Wampanoag heritage and created a fake story about his father being from Africa with no proof. But they said it because they wanted to connect him and set up a town in Sierra Leone. Till this day, there are no primary sources of Paul Cuffey's father being an African, yet all historical publications are running around with this narrative. The lie got so intense, they even made up a false interpretation for the name, trying to connect it to the word Kofi, which is an African name. But his name isn't Kofi on no primary records. And it just was another way to further Africanize his identity. As you can see, there's a blatant pattern of people trying to Africanize Black Americans, even when they have proven to be indigenous. And a constant effort to try to ship us to Africa. They've been doing this back to Africa thing back then all the way till now. There's even letters of the President of the United States talking about how they have a plan to get us up off this land and send us back to Africa so they can have the land for themselves. In the next part of the video, I will expose the next group of white people who are responsible for Pan-Africanism and how they connect to Paul Cuffey and actually got him to carry out their agenda. And I'll also expose other Black sellouts who helped carry out this plan as well. Even current day sellouts who's currently carrying out this plan right now.